So, is Gary being rational by rejecting TNR as a viable option to take care of a stray cat population? That is the question. I would say no. His reasoning is that he doesn't want to put an animal through the stress of being captured and then, according to him, have its nuts cut off and then thrown back out into the street. So that's the way he characterizes TNR. Of course, TNR refers to Trap, Neuter, Release, which is a program that they do in the state of New Jersey. Back when Mendiham lived in Mendham, New Jersey, he was known as someone who fed a bunch of stray cats. Now, according to him, his version of the story is that an old lady who lived there, who may or may not be still alive and somewhere in the state of New Jersey, had a bunch of cats. And she had a bunch of cats. Now, it's interesting to note that this lady, we don't know her name, but if she were still alive, she would be around the age of 90 to 100. Now, the person that Gary lives with is in that same age range. So now I've also heard Gary say that this person who owned these cats died. So either he lived with two people who were in the age of what would be the age of 90 now, but were 70 years old around the time that this happened, or they're the same person. And if this person died and now she's subsequently, quote unquote, living in a house somewhere, collecting SSI checks, but she needs help paying for the taxes, the property tax, so she had Gary move in. Well, whatever, never mind, I'm going off on a tangent. Anyway, so we were talking about TNR. So this lady lived in Mendham on the property that Gary lived, and she owned a bunch of cats. And now, a lot of things about this story don't add up. Gary lives on a part of a larger property in a groundskeeper's house. So does that mean that there were two groundskeepers' houses and the other one was owned by the lady? Something about that doesn't add up to me, right? Because the house he lived on was a groundskeeper's house for a large estate. Okay, it wasn't like he lived in an apartment. Now, if you listen to his version of the story, he characterizes it that he lived in with a bunch of neighbors who were all just neighbors and they all rented. But that's just not true. It was a groundskeeper's house on the property of a larger estate. Okay. So I'm not calling him a liar. I'm just saying a lot of stuff he says doesn't add up to me. Okay. Either he's really shitty at explaining the details or keeping the details straight, or he's making shit up. Now, the cats were allegedly owned by this lady who died, and so they just lived there for 20 years. Now, the thing is, Gary believes that it would be in humanity's interest to blow up the planet, and for the people who don't want to go along with his plan, he actually advocates for fighting a war. So it would be like World War III, right? The Ethelists versus the pro-lifers or whatever. And he justifies that by saying that a little bit of pain and suffering now will be worth it if it ends the cycle of suffering on planet Earth. So if you apply that logic to TNR, unless he is able to find a veteran, now according to him, his logic, I'm not saying I agree with this, I'm not saying it makes sense, but I'm just explaining it. According to his logic, it's far better to euthanize the animal than to quote-unquote cut its nuts off and throw it back onto the street. Because you're putting it to sleep anyway, you might as well just not wake it up again. So apparently Gary doesn't understand how surgery works. He thinks that they inject the animal with some kind of sedative that will kill it unless they inject anti-sedative into it, in which case it would wake it up again. Or maybe it's like Pet Cemetery. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe according to him, it's like Pet Cemetery. When you go under for surgery, you're actually dying, and then they bring you back to life with some kind of voodoo. I don't know. God only knows. And I'm an atheist, but God only knows what is going on in his head. Okay, so that's his argument. Now, if he cannot find a veterinarian to do that, wouldn't it be worth it in any case to have the stray cats spayed and neutered, just so that it prevents future generations of cats from suffering? Well, not according to him. According to him, it's so much worse that a cat is walking around without its nuts, because according to him, cats apparently think about that and internalize that. You know, like a cat doesn't know that they have been neutered. Okay, they're not smart enough. They don't have the ability to self-reflect in that way. So that isn't actually causing them pain and suffering. Gary is projecting his own, what would be his own psychology in that situation onto an animal. He's anthropomorphizing an animal when he does that, which is stupid. So he's stupid for doing that. And then if he doesn't think that the transitory suffering would be worth preventing future generations of cats from, according to him, freezing after 1 or 2 years, freezing to death and starving, because according to him, that's what cats do in Mendham. I don't know if that's true or not. According to him, there's cats that live with him for like 10, 15 years. And according to him, he has over 40 skeletons buried in his backyard in Mendham. Now, when the real estate developer digs that up, I don't know if they're going to find skeletons of just cats or if they're going to find other things too. But that would be interesting to see. What else? Yeah, so it's just totally illogical. It's like he doesn't think that it's worth going along with TNR, even though it would prevent the suffering of these animals. And according to him, from his own mouth, straight from the horse's mouth, suffering is the only thing that has intrinsic value in the universe, and it has a negative value, so we want to eliminate it as much as possible. Which is actually like a contradiction in terms, right? If eliminating suffering is a good, then there is something in the universe that has a value that's not negative. So that's a contradiction. So that's another one of his logical fallacies that he does. Yeah, it makes no sense to be willing to euthanize an animal to prevent its future suffering, but then turn around and say, well, if I can't euthanize the animals, we'll just let them breed, endlessly. And then he chastises people or yells at them and for like supporting TNR, like they're terrible people. That's just really fucking stupid, and he's just really illogical. So that's actually all I had to talk about. I don't really have anything else to talk about. This isn't even a real video today, I guess. So there you go.